Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Bobby Wilson with me. Bobby is a former MLB player. He played with multiple different teams, and now today he's doing the coaching aspect of it. And one of the things that I'm super excited to talk about, as you'll hear Bobby's story today, is just how when you show up and you're consistent, you get results. And so I think that has been a pivotal point for him in his career. So, Bobby, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to do this.
You bet. So, growing up, talk a little bit about getting introduced to baseball at a young age and, going from enjoying the game to finding a passion for the game.
Yeah, so it started really young. I mean, I started when I was still in diapers, hitting the ball, running around the kitchen table. We play ball, good hit was kind of our saying around the house. Got into t-ball at 5 years old, and I just always loved the game. Growing up in Florida, obviously year-round baseball. In St. Pete, we had the New York Mets have spring training there, St. Louis Cardinals. So my family's from New York and grew up a huge Mets fan. So having them in St. Pete kind of sparked the passion for the game and the love for the game, and being able to see those guys every spring training was a real treat. And some of my fondest memories are my dad and I going and shagging balls beyond the fence there from all the home runs those guys hit. And I mean, I fell in love with the game and have been in love with it ever since.
I love that. Now, for you, as you're getting into the high school era of your career, you're playing with a lot of talented people, and you guys have a lot of great success. And going into senior year, there's some expectations, and you guys deliver, going 31-0. So, talk a little bit about that year and just playing alongside of tremendous players, but also having team success and staying focused.
Yeah, the good thing about that is we all played travel ball together. We played little league together. We all grew up together, which you don't really see anymore. You know, we had
Right.
we had a transfer in here or there, but for the most part, the core group of guys that were on that high school team were, from our hometown of Seminole. And something that we're still very proud of is the Seminole area, Seminole High School. And it always brings us back together. So yes, it was a very, very talented team. Off that team, I believe we had six guys drafted my senior year, which
Yeah.
is still a record, I believe. But we wind up having 9 or 10 guys actually get drafted and play pro ball, and I couldn't even tell you how many from that team went on to play college ball as well. So it was a good time in our county. Dunedin High School was also a rival of us, and they had a couple guys play pro ball. One of the guys I'm actually coaching with, Kenny Holmberg, went to that. But just in our area in general, baseball was so big. There's a lot of pro guys that kind of settled in the area. So baseball was king where we grew up. But yeah, unbelievable high school team. Um, Fun to be a part of that. 31-0, like you said, wire to wire. Mythical national champions. It was a great time in my life, and something that definitely shaped and formed the rest of my life.
Yeah. Now, as you had success there, that opens up college doors. And, baseball is a little bit different than other sports, right? Where you do get the opportunity to be drafted right out of high school. But sometimes that draft pick's just not the right fit, or it's not the round you thought you'd be going to. So you originally signed with Mississippi, but then through a series of events, you end up transferring or not going to Mississippi. So talk a little bit about that piece of the pie for you.
Yeah, so I come from a divorced family. My mom and dad got divorced when I was 12, 13 years old. I have a younger brother who's 6 years younger than me. So we went through some financial hardships. We did. I mean, it's not that we didn't have food on the table, but for me to go to the University of Mississippi, to go to Ole Miss, it would have cost a lot of money and put us in a financial, we would have been hurting.
Mm.
St. Pete Junior College came in later in the game and said, "Hey, listen, we can offer you a full ride. You can stay at home." And at that time, junior college, and I believe still to this time, junior college baseball was really good in our area.
Yeah.
So the competition was up to par. And a lot of guys, you go to 1 year of junior college, then you transfer into a 4 year university, or if you have to go 2 years, then you transfer into a 4 year. But those 4 years, you're consistently playing. So whereas you go in as a freshman, you can be redshirt. There's a lot of things that can happen to where you might not even see the field until you're a junior or senior. So At that point, with what we had financially, it was just going to be very hard for us, especially out of state tuition, to go to Ole Miss. I loved the campus. I loved going there. Um, Dan McDonald, who's at Louisville, was the main recruiter, and Mike Bianco, who's also a Seminole guy. So there were ties there to my hometown. It was I was overwhelmed with the experience there. For somebody who's never left home, that would have been a big step for me. But like I said, I was lucky. St. Pete came in. Dave Pano was the head coach there at that time. Took care of me. There was programs that I could do to make some more money on the side to kind of help out. So it was just the right fit. And there was a lot of players on that team that were really, really good players that wind up played professional baseball. A lot went to, transferred to Division I schools. So at the time for me, it was just the perfect fit, and it worked out well.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about that from a perspective standpoint, right? I think, at that age, it's tough to even have that perspective, right? And maybe some of this is the wisdom of later on in life. Maybe it wasn't that easy of a choice, when you're 17, 18, but, you're making it sound like it was easy now. But talk a little about having perspective, right? I mean, wow, what an amazing opportunity it would have been to play baseball in the SEC. I mean, one of the toughest, conferences in the country. And at the same time, there's things that are bigger than sports, right? Hey, if this is going to mean tough financial spots for me or for my family, maybe going and playing baseball here, not as glamorous, right? In regards to it's not Ole Miss, but it's still going to give me the opportunity to play and, get myself closer to getting drafted again.
Yeah, I mean, at that time, it was definitely a discussion that we had.
Yeah.
It was, you're only going to get this much scholarship money. This is kind of what it's going to. And at that point, you talk about numbers that as a 17-year-old, you have no idea what that truly means. But my dad has always kind of, pushed me, guided me in the right direction. He was a police officer for 30 years here in Pinellas County. So he always pushed me and put me in the right direction to make good decisions. And that was honestly the best decision I ever made. Looking back on everything, because I was drafted in the 26th round. Of those 6 guys I mentioned got drafted, I was the last one to get drafted out of that group. So that inspired me. That burned me a little bit. I was upset about that being the last one drafted out of my high school group. Go to junior college. Like I said, had a decent year. Didn't get a call the first day of that draft. So again, I'm pissed off. And wind up going into my sophomore year of junior college there as well. And then I actually committed to go to another SEC school. I committed to go to LSU. But I used that sophomore year as motivation to push me. It's like, okay, well, you didn't get drafted the first day, and the second year I go to junior college there in St. Pete, I was player of the year in Florida for junior college, right? So
Yes.
Promoted me, pushed me to that next level. Had an unbelievable year there. And at that time, they had a draft and follow, which they don't have it anymore, but a team could actually draft you and watch you through your sophomore year. So I wind up getting drafted between my freshman and sophomore year in the 48th round by Tom Kochman, who Tom Kochman, his son, Casey Kochman, and I played Little League together. We played travel ball. We played high school. Casey was a first rounder, 13th overall by the Angels. Tom was a scout with the Angels. So kind of he drafts me. He actually called, and this is a funny story. He calls my dad and he says, "Hey, do you want me to draft Bobby?" It wasn't I feel bad, but it was kind of like, he didn't get drafted. It's a 48th round, which they don't have anymore. He's like, "I'm just going to take him," and he took me on the factor that for my high school team, that I was a leader on that team. I was a winner. I've always won Little League, high school. We always won. And he just said, "I'm going to take a chance on him just because I think that he, I like the makeup." That was the big key in that draft. So my dad asked me, he goes, "Hey, Tom called. Do you want, they said he's going to draft you. Do you want?" It's like, Dad, I really don't give a shit. I was like, I don't care what they do. I'm going to go to junior college again the second year, and I'm going to have a great year. So, kind of betted on myself with that. You know what I mean? So go there, player of the year, my sophomore year, commit to LSU. And then after that year, Tom Kochman said, "Hey, listen, the Angels want to offer you some money to jump into pro ball."
Yeah.
And jumped into pro ball. It was the perfect fit for me. The Angels, Tom Kochman was going to be my first manager. And I owe a lot to Tom Kochman. I want to make sure that that's out there. He knows that. He knows how much I love him. I care for him. I thank him. He taught me how to be a man, how to be a professional. And then it kind of led into being a good husband and a good father. So at that point in time, it was just the right fit for me.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack there, and I want to start with, you go to junior college that first year, you've got a chip on your shoulder about where you were drafted, but that first year was good, but it wasn't nearly as good as the second year. So talk a little bit about, finding motivation when things don't go well, opposed to the woe is me story and just kind of saying, well, I guess maybe this isn't for me, right? Taking action and changing the way the story could be written.
Yeah, well, there's decisions I even had to make in high school, and I remember my father and I having the talk. Said, "What do you want to do? Right? Do you want to?" And even my high school coach, he told me this story. He goes, "You're going to be the guy sitting at the end of the bar." And I'm like, "What are you talking about, man? Be the guy at the end of the bar." He goes, "You're going to be the guy at the end of the bar telling everybody how good you were in Little League."
Yeah.
And that kind of resonated with me. Like, no, I want to be the guy who walks into the bar and everybody says, "Oh, there's Bobby," or "There goes the big leaguer right there."
Yeah.
So that motivated me, along with my dad saying, "You got to make a decision here. What do you want to do? If you're going to be invested in this, you have to be invested in this full go. You have to make good decisions on the field. You have to make even better decisions off the field." And that's kind of just what motivated me. It was like, okay, if I'm in, I'm in.
Yeah.
And I was a kid who was always dealt with weight. When I was in high school, I was heavier set, so it was like, okay, now I have to again. 16, 17-year-old, my friends are eating McDonald's every day, and I have to make a decision to no, I got to go home and grill chicken because this is going to be a constant battle for me, whatever it was. But
Yeah.
I didn't do a lot of the things that a lot of my friends were doing because I was committed to the game, committed to making a better life for everybody involved. So yes, there's a lot of decisions to be made. I made those decisions. I don't regret them at all.
Yeah.
And I always tell my players, I tell young kids I talk to, there's always going to be short-term sacrifice for long-term success. And it's can you handle that? And like I said, I tell them the guy at the end of the bar story as well. Which guy do you want to be?
Yeah.
So those were kind of the motivating factors for me.
Well, and I love that because there is sacrifice that has to be had to get to our ultimate goal. But I think what happens for many people is they're able to do that for a little while, but then they lose sight of what that long-term goal is, or it seems so far off that it's like, well, I'll worry about that as they get closer. And the problem is that it's every day we're adding up to get to our goal, right? It's not, oh, well, if Monday went well, I can take Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off. It's like, well, no, I got to pick every day to be dedicated to that same goal.
No doubt, and that's what it takes, right? I mean, it's just it. I call them daily disciplines, right?
Hmm.
Are you able to live up to your daily disciplines? Are you able to get up and make your bed? Are you able to have a program set up for your day? Are you able to stick to a schedule? As a player, are you able to go to the gym in spring training when you show up? Are you able to be the first one there, the last one to leave? Like they're all decisions that you can make. But again, that was set up through my father that, this is our standard. These are our
Yeah.
expectations of how we live our life. And that just kept building and building and building. And I never thought I would be, I never thought I'd play in the big leagues for 10 years and now going on my 21st year in professional baseball. I never thought that would truly happen, but I knew that it was going to happen,
Hmm.
so it was a dream, but um, and I tell this story all the time too. I have a friend, Casey Jennings, who's a Navy SEAL. He's going through buds, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, what's if you don't get through this, what's your backup plan?" He's like, "I don't have a backup plan."
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I didn't articulate it as well as he did, but I didn't have a backup plan. There was no backup plan. There's no like, oh, if I don't make it in baseball, I'm going to go, sell insurance or I'm going to do this. That was my plan, and I was going to do it. So
I love that. I love it. Well, and the second thing I want to highlight as you were kind of sharing your story there is, you know, there's one thing to be said about the skill set that you had on the field, but it was the other piece that ultimately was probably the decision maker for them to take you in that position in the draft because it was they saw your leadership qualities, they saw your work ethic, they knew you came from, a household where you were being held to a standard, right? And unfortunately, those are all things that can't get measured all the time, but we get to see it in how you act day in and day out. So talk just a little bit about, being a person of character all the time and how that can parlay into, like you said, it made me a better father, made me a better husband, right? I mean, it made me a better baseball player, even though I might not have been thinking about that as I was doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't, but that like I said, that was the standard. That's what
Yeah.
I was going to do every day. And some of the life lessons that I talked about Tom Kochman, and there's kind of three things that he talked about, right? It was please and thank you, be on time, and hold the door for others. Like
Mm,
three basic skills in life that you can do regardless of how you feel.
yeah.
So I just feel like for me it was if I stuck to um, my standards, if I stuck to what I expected of myself, everything else was going to fall in line. And part of the what we talked about of being able to be in the game for so long is the respect factor for others, right? Like
Yeah.
treat others how you want to be treated, but there has to be a respect factor for the players, for the coaches, for front office, for fans. You have to show respect if you want to get respect. So one thing that I've always uh, prided myself on is being a good person, trying to take care of others. And in the catcher role, it's servant leadership, right? Like serve to lead, which is a quote I'll take from the Dodgers when I was with them. You really you serve, you do everything for the pitchers in my position so that you can lead them down the road, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing I'm proud of is the relationships I've built over this 21-year span of professional baseball, but also the connection I have with my high school friends.
Yeah.
It's something that at the end of the day, like that's what you're going to be defined by is the relationship you build with people, and that's something that I truly believe.
I love it. So jumping back into the story, we do, you're the Florida Player of the Year. You sign with LSU, which once again, one of the best programs in the country, year in, year out. But you decide to forego that and enter into the pro realm. And I'd love to say, day one you're in the big stadium, but no, we start through start through the farm clubs and we're working our way up. So talk a little bit about that because I know it's not exactly the lavish life of luxury that people get to a little bit later on in the career if they can progress through the system.
No, the minor league stinks. I'm gonna be straight up honest with you. The minor leagues is hard.
Yeah.
I can remember going to when I signed. My first assignment was to go to Arizona for a week, where they had our complex at Gene Autry Park in Mesa, Arizona. So I go there. I'm there for a week. Reggie Willits, who played in the big leagues for a long time, was my roommate, my first roommate. He's now at Oklahoma, coach there. He coached for the Yankees for a while. And I can remember showing up to Arizona. It's like 120 degrees. It feels like you're standing on the sun on these fields that were in the orange field, and all I can remember is getting there. It's super hot. Like I don't know what to expect. I go to the complex. Nobody's speaking English. There's like five guys because at that level, there's a lot of the Dominican League guys come up. There's a lot of younger Latin players at the complex during that time. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, what did I just get myself into? I could have been at LSU, with all the amenities that I could ever ask for. But I'm here in Arizona, and I can remember the first day going to get, they at that point in time they gave you lunch. That was all you get, and for lunch it was hot chicken noodle soup and a hot sandwich. Right, so I'm thinking it's 120 degrees. I'm in professional baseball, and I get a hot cup of soup and a hot turkey sandwich for lunch. Um, but again, it's what shapes you. It's what molds you,
Yeah.
right? It makes you hungry to get to the next level. So and at that time you had to excel at every level to be promoted. It's a little bit different now to where if you're a big money guy, you're going to be promoted a lot faster. But at that time, you had to jump through every single level of the minor leagues. But after that week, I went to Provo. Tom Kochman was my first manager. Again, took care of me with basic principles, taught me how to be a man, how to be professional. And that's truly what carried me, through the rest of my career was that first taste of it and understanding like, and at that point we were making $850 a month, which, you know, I mean, you're living on your own this is the first time I've ever lived on my own. I got,
Yeah.
we get it to a house in Provo. There's like 10 guys, we're all living in one house together, living on the floor because, we got money, but we didn't get the money yet. We didn't get the money until after the season, so we were literally living off $850 a month, the first year. So, yeah, but that's kind of the jump into pro ball.
Now, I would imagine in your entire time in the minor leagues, especially, you see a lot of guys that come in and they've got a little bit of an ego. Hey, man, I was the best on my high school team. I was the best on my college team, and now I'm here. Like, I'm eating chicken noodle soup in 120-degree weather. Like, and their ego gets a bit too big for them to realize that, once again, what they're doing today is casting the vision for where they could go in the future. So talk a little bit about that. And once again, your mentality of, hey, this is just a stepping stone to really where I want to go.
Yeah, I was never the best. I wasn't even the best player on my high school team, right? But this is all motivation that carried me throughout my career. I was 48th rounder. At that time, I was projected to go top 5 rounds. But again, the situation with Koch was just too good to be true scenario for me. But yeah, you'll see guys that come in that were top rounders, and it pisses you off, to be honest with you, because you see these guys, they get $1 million, or you see this other guy, he gets 850,000 to sign. You're like, I'm way better than that guy,
Yeah.
and then you have to go and prove it, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, and I tell people all the time, even the minor league guys, like, if you guys want to make money, you make it to the big leagues, right? To sit on your sign, unless you're a guy who gets, 5 million, which that doesn't happen very often. You're talking about, top 3, 4, 5 picks in the country. For most of the guys, that bonus goes quick,
Yeah.
So I tell guys all the time, I was like, you're going to make money if you work and you continue to work. I said, at the big league level, they hand you wheelbarrows full of money. And right now the minimum is at 700,000, something like that. It's insane, but it's just, the minor leagues is a segue to really push yourself to get to the major league level. And throughout the minor leagues, like, the one thing that I know now is the minor leagues is for skill acquisition, right? Once you get to the big leagues, that's when you truly start learning. So part of our organization now with our catching department is we try to teach these guys more stuff that you learn at the big league level, so that you don't get there and you get punched in the face and you're like, oh boy, I got to figure this out fast. But once you get to that point, you're kind of running out of time, because, I played for 17 years. I was very lucky, especially being a catcher. But you talk about the lifespan of a baseball player, it's not that long generally. So it's a very, very short window. And it's again, what sacrifices are you going to make at each level to get you to the next step? And like I said, minor leagues stink. It's hard. You play in tough cities. You play in front of nobody. You play every day. Now I think they play 6 days a week. But when I was playing, it was 140 games and 142 days or something. It was every single day you were going. So it is a hard path. The 18-hour bus trips, stopping at a gas station to get some food, headed straight to the ballpark. Like I said, not the best conditions, but it's what hardens you to get ready for the big leagues.
Yeah. So speaking of getting ready for the big leagues, you're progressing in your minor league career, and then you're attempted to get reached on a phone call, but something's not quite working right. So talk about getting the call up to the big leagues.
Yeah. So, we was in Salt Lake City. Again, we at this point still weren't making a ton of money, but there was 4 or 5 of us in a house, spouses, girlfriends. So there's probably 8 to 10 of us living in a house at that time. And my phone wasn't working. I was down in the basement. My phone wasn't working. So my roommates, they come and start banging on the door, and I'm like, holy cow, is there a fire? What do we got? What's going on here? They're banging on the door. Get up, get up, get up. So I'm panicked. I'm complete panicked. I get up and I'm looking around. I'm like, what do we got? He's like, where's your phone at? I was like, it's sitting right next to my bed. What do you mean, where's my phone at? He goes, the manager's been trying to call you for the past 3-4 hours. Can't get a hold of you. And I was like, you look at my phone, and yep, sure enough, there was missed calls there. I was like, sorry, I was sleeping. I didn't get it. So Finally, I get the call our manager, and he says, "Hey, just want to let you know you're going to the big leagues tomorrow." Um, Obviously, called my dad, called my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. Said, "Hey, we're going." Actually, she was there with me. We're going to Anaheim tomorrow morning. So, she called her mom. Her mom flew out. My dad flew out, and it was, first day in the big leagues is like it's your first day at school, right? Wide-eyed, you don't know what to expect. But I was able. Casey Kochman was actually on that team as well. And before I went up for my first at bat, Casey told me, he said, "Hey, bring a ball home for your dad," right? So
Yeah.
faced Dallas Braden that night. Came in late as a replacement. I think we were getting boat raced. Come in late that night as a replacement. Singled in my first at bat off of Dallas Braden. Was able to hand my dad the first hit ball after the game, which was pretty cool. But I will say this: I led the big leagues in hitting for 5 months because I got called up April 28th. I got sent down the next day, so I was hitting 1,000 for 4.5 months. Led the big leagues in hitting there for a while. That would be the only time I ever led the big leagues in hitting.
Hey, but you did. You can say you did.
I did at one point in my career. Yeah.
Now, I want to talk just a little bit about the emotional side of everything in that story that you just said. That everything I've been working for, finally I get this opportunity. I get to play, I get a hit, my dad's here, I mean, what an amazing thing. And then once again, getting called back down. And I'm sure there's a part of you that's like, damn it, I got the call up. Like, now I want to at least stay here a while. Like, I don't want to play one game, go down for a month, play one game, go down for a month. Like, I want to be a part of the consistent flow of the team and in the rotation. So talk a little bit about the emotions of all of that.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. It's hard. You get to you get to the big leagues, and then it's all right. I'm here, and then the next day you're back in the minor leagues. But again, just like anything that's happened in my life, it's always pushed me to be better, right? And
Yeah.
and I wasn't a full time big leaguer till 2010. So 2008, 2009, I was up and down. So I had those conversations a lot. But again, it just motivates you, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, tell me, what do I need to do better? Is it this? Is it that? And you go down and you work on it. At that point, they had it was 72-hour rule to where if you got sent down, you could say take 72 hours.
Hmm.
I said, no, I'm not taking. I need to get back to work because this is where I want to be. So I'm not taking that 72 hours. I'm going back tonight or in the morning, and I'm playing that day because I need to get better so I can stay at this level. And a lot of guys, they're happy just to get there. I wasn't happy just to get there. I wanted to stay. I wanted that to be my life. And I wanted to set me up for the rest of my life. So there's always motivation, right? And I hear like the Michael Jordans of the world watching those documentaries. Like,
Yeah.
you have to find motivation to keep bettering yourself. And I always look for something or someone like, I know I can be better than that guy, or I know I can do that. And that's kind of what I just used as motivation to finally in 2010 make the open day roster, and be there a full season.
Yeah. So as you're saying that, a phrase in my life that I've really harnessed into probably over the last 5 to 7 years, is living blissfully dissatisfied. And people are like, those are two random words to throw together. But, it's the idea of living in bliss, right? Enjoying the things that we're doing. But what oftentimes happens is the second you start enjoying things, you let the gas off, foot off the gas, and you start becoming content with where you're at. And you don't get to the next level, or you don't reach your true potential. So you also have to be slightly dissatisfied, right, with where you're at, because you know what you're capable of, where you're going. So for you, over your career, how did you balance that of, enjoying that moment of hitting the ball? Cause like, holy shit, that's a badass moment. But then at the same token, be like, all right, but tomorrow I got to get back to work. I need to put more effort in.
Yeah, it's definitely a short-term memory, right? And especially in baseball, since you play every day.
Yeah.
It's we had a coach that always used to say, like, there's three forms in baseball, or two forms. It's you're humble, you're being humbled, and you're about to be humbled.
Yeah.
Because it's just like there's so many ups and downs in the game, and you deal with so much negativity and lack of success. And I'm sure everybody knows it. 300 hitter, 3 out of 10 is a Hall of Famer, which I was a 2 out of 10 guy. So I mean, there's more downs than ups, but um, you're right. I mean, and I can say this: when I got to the end of my career, I started getting complacent. I was like, I didn't want to work as hard as I had in the past, whether that's age catching up to me or just the game telling me like, hey, it's time to go. Like I said, I was lucky to play till I was 36 years old, which
Yeah.
was longer than most guys. But yeah, through that 17-year career, the last year in 2019 was the only year I felt that.
Yeah.
I always worked extremely hard in the off season, worked extremely hard during the season. I was open to new ways to improve my game. Later in my career, the tech started coming in, and a little reluctant at first, but I knew that ultimately it was going to help me. So I would just say complacency is the killer. You talked about the guys that come in with egos, like, oh, I can't believe I'm coming here. Those guys are out of the game super fast. Like
Yeah.
if they're complacent, they're happy. Oh, I got my signing bonus, I'm good. You see more guys that get big signing bonus out of the game faster than guys who got no bonuses because there's hunger, there's drive to be able to get that money. So, like I said, I got a little bit of money out of the draft, but I didn't make it enough to set me up for life. So there was definitely motivation there.
Yeah, I love that. Now, there are so many things that can change your ability to play. It could be getting called up, called down, trades. And throughout a 16, 17-year career, you get a lot of these different events. So we're going to go through a couple of them, but one was a collision with Mark Teixeira. Sometimes injuries can happen. So talk a little bit about, that piece of the game for you and maybe even that moment.
Yeah, so I'll tell you this: as a catcher, there'd be mornings I'd wake up and my leg would be hurting, and I'd go to touch it, and there'd be a bruise the size of a grapefruit. It's just part of the role of a catcher is just getting
Right.
consistently beat up, knees back. I've broke my thumb twice. I broke my ring finger once. Broke my ankle. In that collision, specifically, got a concussion, broken ankle, was out for a while. Yeah, but when you talk about, you get into transactions, you get into injury stuff. There isn't a transaction that I haven't gone through as a player. So when the one good thing about being designated, traded, released, sent down, called up is I've been able to experience all those feelings. And one thing that I pulled into my coaching is remembering how that felt as a player, because the
Yeah.
player that's going through that is definitely feeling those same emotions. And I've had, over the last couple of years as a coach, I've sat with some of my catchers that got sent down who, in those meetings, they're not great meetings, and had to talk with them after, like, hey, I know how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Like there's empathy there, because I know how it feels. I know what you're going through. I know, the call you're going to have to make to your significant other, to your parents, to tell them, hey, like, I'm going down, or I got traded, or this and that. But I've been through all those. I've had all the injuries. But it's you're gonna get punched in the mouth. What's your counter punch, right? Are you
Yeah.
gonna lay there? Or are you gonna get back up? So I hope that's kind of a consistent theme with what you hear in my stories. Is I've been punched many times, been knocked down, but I will get up and will continue to get up.
Yeah. Now, as you say that, you and I are talking about your story and as it pertains to baseball, but I mean, this is a life lesson, right? How do you deal with unfortunate emotional things and still show up for your family, still show up for your business, still show up for, your spouse, right? So talk a little bit about that for you, I mean, maybe even a tangible takeaway of what you teach, players that you're coaching now, or how you would handle that. Hey, this emotionally sucks and it only happened 18 hours ago, but there's still someone that needs me today. Not only
Mhm.
myself, but my team, my spouse, my family. They need me to show up as well.
Yeah, I think kind of having kids put that more into perspective
Mm.
for me, right? And we had like I told you, we had a leadership with some of our younger players last week, and see why Chris Young played a video, and basically the video said, It was the basketball coach at for the Duke women's basketball
Mm.
team. Gosh, what's her name? I'm drawing a blank. Anyways, she was just talking about, like, it gets harder. It never gets easier. Nothing in life gets easier. It's always going to get harder. It's how do you handle hard,
Yeah.
right? And that kind of resonated with me because I'm like, yeah, nothing in my life has ever been easy, but you get better at handling the hard, right? And I think
Yeah.
just putting things in perspective, like baseball was a yes, it was my job, but it was a game.
Yeah.
And what mattered most was my family. So I was always, would I bring it home at times? I'd be lying and said if I didn't, but I knew that my girls didn't care.
Yeah.
They didn't care that I got designated or traded. They needed their dad. So,
Mm.
um, like I said, like it doesn't get harder. You handle hard better. So that's kind of what I've taken from just my life story.
That's so good. Now, I have to bring up your trade, well, the multiple trades within 35 days. So, I mean, to get traded once is emotional, but talk about getting traded twice in a month's time frame.
Well, this is a great story, actually. So we're in Glendale. We're playing the White Sox in spring training. I think this is still an MLB record being traded between the same two teams. But I can remember I got done playing that day. Um, it was a day before we were breaking camp. So we were going to Arlington that next day on a plane. I shipped my car to Arlington already. Um, uh, my wife and my oldest daughter, we were going to fly to Arlington the next day. We had it all set up. We were, going to get our place set up. This was 2016. So
Yeah.
Glendale, I had an unbelievable spring too. I had a great spring training. I'm like, oh, I'm on this team easy. Remember walking through the clubhouse and, Adrian Beltre, the GOAT, sitting there and Elvis Andrus was sitting there and like, hey man, great spring. Congrats, man. You're on this team, And I remember
Yeah.
like, yeah, heck yeah. And then somebody said, "Hey, John Daniels wants to talk to you." I was like, "All right, cool. He's going to tell me I'm on the team.
Yeah.
I'm jazzed about this." So he calls me in the office. He says, "Hey, we just traded you to Detroit." And it's like, "Detroit? What are you talking about?" I was like, I thought you were calling me in here to tell me I made the team and
Yeah.
congratulations and make sure everything's set up, yada yada yada." He's like, "Nah, we traded for you. You're going to go." I'm going to put you in touch with our traveling secretary, and you'll talk to him tonight, and head to Florida for spring training in Lakeland because I live in Tampa St. Pete area.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me, And I go outside, I tell them, they're like, "Well, now what?" I go, "Well, I got to get my car shipped back to Florida, then figure out where we go from there." Because at that time, the Florida spring training was a few days longer. So I fly to Florida, go to Lakeland the next day. I can remember, I go from, being on the big league team or what I thought I was going to be on the big league team to now getting sent to minor league camp
Yeah.
with Detroit because they had Jared Saltalamacchia and James McCann were their two starting catchers there. So I can remember I get sent to minor league camp for one day. I go and I catch Michael Fulmer on a backfield. They didn't even give us jerseys. We had T-shirts, baseball pants. I flew in for one day. I caught Michael Fulmer on a backfield. And the next day they said, "Hey, you're going to go to Toledo," right? So I go to Toledo the following day, fly to Toledo. Season starts the next day there. Played one game in Toledo. It got snowed out for the next week or whatever. So then I get a call, "Hey, you're getting called up to Detroit." I was like, "Okay." So now I got my car in Toledo. I drive to Detroit. Get there in the morning. There's a day game. I'm not playing that day, so it's like first day of school, meeting all new guys. So I get there. I think I was there for 3 weeks. McCann rolled his ankle, so they called me up. I go there for 3 weeks. We have an off day in Cleveland. GM calls me from Detroit, says, "Hey, McCann's coming back. We're working on something, trying to do right by you," which I truly appreciated. Robinson Trinos was the catcher in Texas. He had just got hurt, right? So he goes, "Hey, we got something worked out for you. You're getting traded back to Texas." right? So I think it was 20 some odd days later. Now I get traded back to Texas. Um, so get traded back there, meet the team in Toronto. I played really well that year. I had a pretty good year. But then it gets even better. So then we get to the trade deadline, and I kind of, I played good the first couple months, but it started tailing off. Chirinos was coming back, and then they're in the trade market for a catcher. They actually trade for Jonathan Lucroy. I get designated. Again, walking up to the airplane to get on the plane, get a call from John Daniels and Bannister, and they said, "Hey, we just designated you." So I call my wife, say, "Hey, come back to the airport, pick me up. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm on waivers. We'll see what happens." Next day, I get a call from Tampa Bay Rays general manager. "Hey, we claimed you on waivers. Want you to fly to Tampa, meet the team." So I fly to Tampa the following day after that, and jump on the field that day to catch Chris Archer, finish the season in Tampa. So, sorry, that's a long-winded answer
I
to your
love it.
question, but it's what happened,
Yeah.
and again, you roll with the punches. You get knocked down. You hear bad news, stuff you don't want to hear, but you keep going. You keep pushing forward, and like I said, it doesn't. You get better at handling hard, and towards the later end of my career, I got released for the first time in my 17th year due to basically it was if you had a certain amount of service time, they had to pay you a certain amount of money. At that point, the Tigers didn't want to do it, so I got released in my last year of my playing career. Re-signed a day later, but like I said, every transaction you could possibly think of, I've gone through at least once.
Well, so something I want to highlight in all of that too, and once again, we're talking about in baseball, but I think this will resonate with a lot of people, is having a spouse that understands, right? I mean, holy smokes, man. I mean, to just be you going through it is tough enough, but then to have a spouse that also is, going through these emotions and roller coasters with you, you know, talk about one, what that meant to you to have the support at home, but two, if there's a spouse of somebody that says, man, we've been going through a lot, motivation or encouragement to them to keep, being supportive in what's going on.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's harder on them. Like right now, I'm getting to leave in a couple days to go to spring training, and my wife
Yeah.
we have 3 kids and a dog. So, fortunately, my wife's been superwoman, and we've gone through a lot of this stuff together, from the minor leagues to the big leagues, and it hasn't been easy. And I'd be lying and said if it's easy. Um, there's been a lot of ups and downs, and she's had to pick me up quite a few times, which has been nice. But she's always been super supportive. I've been lucky to have a tight group of people around me that are very supportive. And they've made more sacrifices than I have, honestly. I think surrounding yourself with people like that only helps in what you want to accomplish or you want to do. I couldn't imagine having somebody who wasn't as supportive as my dad, as my wife, because there's no way I could have done this without them.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky. I'm very grateful for everything she's done, my dad's done, to allow me to, live this dream that I'm living. But I tell myself all the time, don't wake up, man, because this is pretty awesome.
I love it. Now, for you, because of, your tenure in the career, your success in the career, but also I think, what we talked about before, your character, how you carry yourself, the way you lead in the locker room, the way you show up. When you did retire, there was an opportunity for you to coach and you were a desired candidate. So talk a little bit about making the transition from playing to coaching, doing it in the game you love, but it's a whole different world than what you've been exposed to for the last 16, 17 years.
Yeah, it is completely different. It is night and day. As a player, you worry about yourself, right? You take care. What do I need to take care of today? Because in baseball, yes, it is a team sport, but it's very individualized, right?
Yeah.
You're dependent on, each guy doing what they need to do for team success, right? And it's kind of one of those weird games where, it's individual, but it's wrapped in winning, right?
Yeah.
So making the transition to coaching, and I was supposed to manage a double-A team in Frisco for the Rangers. But again, that's when the year the pandemic happened, right? So that was 2020. I was supposed to go manage. I never got that opportunity because the pandemic hit. Wind up going to an alt site where we had basically a group of players to back up in case somebody in the major leagues got hurt. So I went there, and honestly, that was probably the biggest advantage that I had in my career. Because honestly, if I would have went out that first year and managed, I might have turned around and said, I can't do this. But
Right.
being able to be around like the group of guys that I was around at that alt site truly opened my eyes to what the coaching world is like. And there was a lot of one-on-one time there. It was really beneficial for me. But it is difficult because, one thing that I've kind of learned going through this process of transitioning into coaching is that, and a lot of players lose this. They think like, oh, well, I did it, so they should just listen to me. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of these players, and there's a great quote. It's the players don't care what you know till they know you care about them, right?
Yep.
So that's pretty close to the saying, right?
Yeah.
They don't know how much they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. There it is.
Yep.
Nailed it, right?
Nailed it.
So that was kind of I had to transition to that, which, like I said, my whole career was servant leadership. Taking care of others first. But now you're doing a standpoint of leadership, right? So you have to be able to lead these guys. But if you're not prepared, the one thing that I found out, if you're not prepared, you're not ready. And the one thing I always remember is when the student is ready, you better be ready.
Yep.
So when they ask me a question, like if I'm not prepared, which I don't think you have to know the answer to everything, but majority of it, you better be prepared for, because if you lose them on that first question, that first comment, you lose them forever. So the one thing I did coaching was I jumped in and I tried not to use my playing career as my platform, right? Obviously there's credibility there, but there was other things that I had to do to build up the confidence in those players to come to me and say, hey, what do you got on this, or what do you got on that? So it is a tough transition. And again, like some of the best coaches that I've had in the game never played it.
Yeah.
But there's sympathy, there's empathy, there's true desire and investment in the player. And those were kind of the best guys. So, long story longer, like my transition into coaching was understanding that my past experiences, yes, they give me credibility, but they don't matter. You know what I mean? What matters is finding new ways to explain things to players, being open-minded to different ideas, being open-minded to, other people's success that have come before me in the coaching field, learning from them. So I don't know. Coaching is tough, man. It's hard. It's hard watching from the sidelines. As a player, you either did it or you didn't. I mean, you either got the job done or you did not get the job done. But from the coaching, all we can do is you can prepare them, get them ready both mentally and physically, and you hope that they have the ability to execute that plan. And it's watching your kids do whatever they do, and you can't control it, but you just hope that you lead them in the right direction.
Yes, I love it. Well, Bobby, I appreciate you sharing all your stories. Are there any other pivotal moments that really stand out to you as you kind of reflect on your story and your career that you'd like to share today?
I mean, there's so much stuff that has happened. I hit the main stuff, and like I said, I've been very fortunate, very lucky to be in the position that I'm in. And I don't take it for granted, not one day. I know that what I do is special. It's a privilege, it's an honor, and with the position I'm in comes great responsibility also, right? It's stuff that you just have to do. We talked about the daily discipline, stuff like that. There's a lot that comes along with the honor of being a Major League Baseball player, now a Major League coach, that I take a lot of pride in, I'm thankful for. But yeah, that's pretty much the life story right there.
I love it. Well, I'm excited to continue to follow your journey. Can't wait for you guys to win the big ring, and then we'll get to have you on here again and highlight the story of the season as you guys win that.
Oh yeah, that's the last thing on the bucket list, man. I just need that World Series ring.
Yes, sir. Well, Bobby, thanks again, man, and look forward to staying connected and following your story.
Thank you so much for having me.